Hi everyone, my name is Stephanie Sowl and I am a program officer at ECMC Foundation overseeing our Rural Impact Initiative. I'm so excited for you all to join us as we talk about the request for proposals on the research on advancing rural post-secondary education. Before we get started with the details of the RFP, I'm just going to give a little bit of an overview about ECMC Foundation and our strategic framework. Our mission is to improve higher education for career success among underserved populations through evidence-based innovation. Many individuals, especially students of color, low-income students, first-generation college students, and adult learners face systemic barriers in their pursuit of post-secondary certificates and degrees, impairing their ability to secure jobs with family-sustaining wages. ECMC Foundation's work addresses these challenges. Our vision is for all learners to unlock their fullest potential. Central to our vision is the idea that everyone has the innate ability to unlock their fullest potential, no matter what educational and career pathways they seek. With the right support and education, all learners, emerging and continuing, have the power to turn aspirations into realities. The Foundation operates using a strategic framework that emphasizes three strategic priorities: removing barriers to post-secondary completion, building the capacity of organizations, institutions, and systems, and transforming the post-secondary ecosystem. We see value in serving students, institutions, and the broader post-secondary ecosystem, and having these three priorities allow us to cover this territory. We focus our grants and investments in initiatives or thematic areas where we commit to strategic grant-making, learning, and partnership over a multi-year period, and strategically responsive funding is core to our work. The traditional higher education environment was not designed for everyone, and while the sector has clearly evolved for the better, further systemic change is needed. That is our North Star. Our North Star answers the question, why does ECMC Foundation do its work? The Foundation's mission and strategic framework remain unchanged and aligned with the North Star. We still aim to improve higher education for career success among underserved populations through evidence-based innovation. Our North Star establishes a time frame by 2040, a measurable goal, eliminating equity gaps in post-secondary completion, a target population, underserved learners, and an ultimate goal, greater opportunity for social and economic mobility. The language, have greater opportunity for social and economic mobility, provides clarity that the Foundation intends to support post-secondary credentials that result in broader outcomes beyond economic gains alone, as strategies develop and data on post-secondary outcomes continue to mature. Together, our North Star and mission statement are in concert with each other. They are complementary and mutually reinforcing. As I alluded to in a previous slide, our focus on initiatives represent a commitment to working towards systemic change in particular areas. We have identified 6 initiatives. All of them emerged after years of grant making and investing, research, and engagement with experts. In contrast to one-off investments or grants, an initiative is forward-looking. It's multi-year and involves significant funding in the multi-million-dollar range. Most importantly, it has a clear point of view of what we are trying to accomplish and has articulated goals and metrics we will track. The Rural Impact Initiative is the newest, approved by our board in October 2023 and publicly launched in January of 2024. We believe that the success of learners and a strong post-secondary ecosystem is vital to a vibrant rural community, and as a result, we envision a measurable increase in rural learners' completion by 2035. This slide shows our path forward for the Rural Impact Initiative with a 3-pronged strategy design. The first strategy is focused on developing knowledge, and we will focus on research, evaluation, and the impact of policies on rural learners and rural serving institutions. The second strategy is focused on catalyzing rural serving institutions. We know that rural serving institutions are vital to their communities, yet they are more often than not under-resourced. In this priority area, we're interested in supporting capacity building and technical assistance efforts, uplifting promising practices to improving persistence and completion for rural learners, and the vitality of rural serving institutions. Our third strategy is supporting community-based organizations that work in partnership with post-secondary institutions to make strides in advancing post-secondary completion and rural community workforce and economic development. As you can see, the key activity for Strategy 1 is applied research, which led to the creation of the Research on Advancing Rural Post-Secondary Education, RFP. Now to get into the details of the RFP. For the grant term, this is up to 3 years, beginning no earlier than November 1st, 2024. All projects must also start by December 15th, 2024. The grant amount up to $450,000 total. So this can be split however you wish, whatever the project demands. So if you have a 2-year project and you're requesting $350,000, you can do $200,000 for the first year, $150,000 for the second year, or if you're asking for the full $450,000 and you're doing a 3-year project, you can evenly split it across. It's whatever the project that you think is important needs to happen. The number of grants, up to 7, will be rewarded, but this is really dependent on the project budget, but we will award up to 7. We also will have our LOIs due July 14th, 2024, and finalists will be invited to submit a full proposal by July 30th, 2024. On that date, both people who advance to the next round will be notified, as well as those who don't. Full proposals will be due by August 27th for those that have been asked to submit a full proposal, and applicants will be notified of the final decision by the end of October. In this period between August and October, we will answer internal questions about the projects. We will also go through peer review for our board to review in our October board meeting. In terms of research priorities, research projects selected for funding through this RFP will be those that examine either the college experiences of rural learners with intersecting identities, roles of rural postsecondary institutions, and/or policies that affect rural postsecondary education. All proposed projects should center research questions that address at least one of these priorities. Successful projects will demonstrate how research findings inform actionable strategies for practitioners, local, state, and federal policymakers, and intermediary funders and partners and funders in advancing the post-secondary success of rural learners. Here are the 3 priorities with potential lines of inquiry. ECMC Foundation is open to other types of projects not included in the lines of inquiry, but we wanted to provide some examples of projects we are interested in. The full RFP document lists in much more detail each of the research priorities and potential lines of inquiry. For priority 1, rural learners with intersecting identities, we're looking for rural students of color, rural LGBTQIA+ students, rural low-income students, rural first-generation students, rural adults, rural immigrants or undocumented students, and in terms of defining rural, we're open to any federal government definition, state definition, or learners themselves who identify as rural. In priority 2, rural post-secondary institutions provide services that are responsive to their local, cultural, geographic, and economic challenges, and this priority area seeks to understand their unique strengths and opportunities in order to build capacity in supporting both their communities and learners. We consider rural post-secondary institutions to be defined by the Alliance for Research on Regional Colleges Rural Serving Institutions, or UW-Madison's STAR Lab on Rural Located Institutions. Similar to rural learners, we are also allowing institutions that may not fit either definition to include a few sentences on why they're rural. For priority 3, local, state, and federal policies play a pivotal role in shaping the landscape of rural post-secondary education, yet we know little about how these policies are implemented or how successful they are. So this priority is really focused on learning more about policies across the local, state, and federal levels. In terms of applicant eligibility, nonprofit organizations are eligible, state government agencies, nonprofit 2- and 4-year institutions and systems, or their affiliated centers or research partnerships. If working directly with rural communities or institutions to collect data, things like if you're interviewing with rural students or community members, or you're leveraging privately held data sets from a rural institution or an organization, then applicants must have an existing relationship with these organizations. If you are doing more publicly available data, this does not apply, but if you're engaging with rural communities, we need to see that there is a relationship there. We also strongly encourage research led by individuals and organizations that are rurally located and/or rural serving, as well as institutions or organizations that are rural-centric. We also strongly encourage researchers from historically underrepresented groups and for institutions that serve underrepresented groups. So these include things like HBCUs, TCUs, HSIs, and regional comprehensive institutions. The application process for this call consists of 2 phases. The first is invitations for letters of intent and invitations to submit a full proposal. Follow the RFP for full details needed on the LOI. These are just a couple of items I just wanted to call out. Also important to note, make sure to start the LOI before the deadline, just because we also ask for key organizational information, which includes the EIN number, the leadership composition of the organization with gender and race diversity if that's collected. So make sure to take a look at the LOI to ensure that you have all of the information before submitting. For the project narrative, this is really a description of your proposed research and its importance to the field. For methodology, this is more of a high-level overview of the methodological approach and the rationale for how it addresses your research questions. And outputs and outcomes are really what's the result of this work? How can it be used in practice, policy, and procedure? Who will the results benefit? How will it be shared? For project team, we're looking for names, their roles on the project, and any relevant qualifications. Partnerships, this is a description of the existing partnerships the project team has with the participants that they intend on studying. And for budget, this is a general breakdown of line items for staff, travel, conferences, subgrants, and also if you've received other funding for the project, and we cap an indirect at 10%. In terms of the review and selection process, we have a process in place for the LOI. So once we have submitted all of the LOIs, the internal ECMC Foundation team and an external advisory committee will consider several factors. You'll see a lot of these have already been represented from based on the rural RFP. So we need to see evidence of commitment support from rural institutions or communities to participate in the research project for those that are looking for data collection from those communities. How the proposed project relates to one or more of the research priorities, the extent to which the research questions align with the proposed methodology, how the project fills an existing gap in the literature, how the findings translate to action, the extent to which the intended audience for the research findings align with the people who are actually making the decisions, the project team's composition and experience, and project cost align with proposed work. Selected partners will also be expected to complete annual and final reports to ECMC Foundation. ECMC is also contracting with an evaluation partner to conduct an implementation and outcomes evaluation of the rural initiative within which these funded projects would sit. So we do expect you to participate in the evaluation with our evaluation partner. We also will work closely with you to identify national conferences and relevant convenings to disseminate findings with key audiences. All research funded by ECMC Foundation must be open access. We seek to create a collaborative community to share ideas and address challenges. So additionally, selected partners will be expected to engage in collaborative activities, including an in-person convening that takes place right before the Association for the Study of Higher Education annual conference. Projects will receive a stipend to support the cost of travel, which will be added to the grant dollar amount. Of course, I'm expecting plenty of questions, so to get ahead of that, I wanted to just provide a list of commonly asked questions and answers I can provide now. Please, if you do have any questions, send me an email. My email is on this page. It's also located on the RFP. I'm happy to answer any questions you may have. And all questions that I receive and the responses I send will be added to an FAQ document on our website. This will be updated twice during the LOI process, once on June 24th and once on July 8th. So the first question, who will see my application? It's the ECMC Foundation internal team and an advisory committee that I mentioned previously. How will my LOI be evaluated? Really look at the guiding questions and the criteria outlined in the RFP because that's how we will be scoring. What kinds of activities will this grant not fund? We won't fund lobbying or other attempts to influence legislation, and that's pretty much the one requirement we have. As a researcher, do I have to be affiliated with an organization to submit an LOI? Yes, you must be affiliated with a nonprofit that can support the necessary IRB. Can we use funds to support payments to graduate students? Yes, we're totally fine with you supporting graduate students that are completing work directly related to the proposed research, but you cannot use this funding to seed new graduate assistantships. What is ECMC Foundation's indirect cost policy? Applicants may request indirect costs up to 10% of direct costs. For direct costs, these are things like salaries, fringe benefits, travel, supplies, materials, training, consultants, dissemination activities, and we ask that up to 10% of those costs can be indirect. Can I submit more than one LOI? Each PI should submit only one LOI, but applicants can be listed as collaborators on other submissions. Do you require a certain level of researcher? LOIs will be evaluated based on the research team's relevant education, experience, and ability to execute the research plan outlined in the LOI. We do not require researchers to have a PhD or be in a tenure track position, just that they actually meet the relevant criteria. Can we fund an extension of existing work? Basically, yes, we definitely can fund an extension of existing work. We just ask that you include language on how this work will build on current efforts. Thank you so much for taking the time to go through this video. Hopefully it was helpful to you, and good luck with your application.